All right. Welcome, everyone. Uh, Thanks for coming. Um, let's go ahead and get started meditating. I'd like to settle into a comfortable posture. Maybe take a couple of deep breaths. And one way to understand meditation is as an exploration of stillness. There are three aspects of stillness that we might explore. There's stillness of the body. So setting the intention not to move as much as possible for the duration of the meditation. And what this stillness of the body does is send a signal to the nervous system that it's okay to relax. It's okay to settle down and drop the guard. And this helps the mind settle down. It's not an immediate thing, but it takes effect over time. It also helps us to learn that we don't always have to follow the mind when it suggests we do something like move or scratch an itch. We don't have to be led around by our thoughts. And the second aspect of stillness that we might explore is stillness of the mind. Stillness of the mind isn't anything that you can do, at least not directly. If you try and do that, if you try and force the mind to be still, if you try and push thoughts out of the mind, what happens is that you just impart more energy to this thought system that's constantly spinning up thoughts. By not liking the world the way it is, the mind becomes more agitated. So the way to go about things is indirectly, by giving the mind something to focus on that's not thoughts. When the mind focuses on thoughts, it reacts to them and simply continues the papancha, the spread of thought. When the mind is focused on an anchor that is not thought or not conceptual, this thought stream loses energy, starts to die down over time. And so if the mind is wound up or agitated, it's helpful to give the mind an anchor like the breath. You can put just a very, very soft focus on the breath, just as much as is needed to help the mind stay present. When the mind is able to stay present without the anchor of the breath, you can simply let go and be present. There's no need to maintain that past its usefulness. It's like riding a bike. Only pedal when you need to. There's no exact science for when to let go of the breath. It's something you learn by trial and error over time. You think the mind feels stable and you let go, and it turns out that it wasn't stable, and the mind gets lost in thought. And so you know you let go too early. Or you hold the anchor for too long and realize, I could have let go earlier, and the mind would have been stable. It's something you learn by feel through practice. And when you come back from being lost in thought, you can re-engage with the anchor, the breath. You might do that for a little bit and see how much is needed. You can let it go again when it feels right. And the third aspect of stillness that we might explore, we might call stillness of experience. And this is a bit different than the other two. With the stillness of body and stillness of mind, the way we explored them was by a little bit of doing, a little bit of intention, a little bit of self. It takes a bit of effort to maintain stillness in the face of discomfort or itches or what have you. There's a bit of doing involved in putting attention on the breath and some discrimination around when to release the breath as the anchor. Not much doing, but some doing. But the way we explore stillness of experience doesn't really have any doing to it. Because the stillness of experience is always there. If you look at the contents of the mind, it's simply phenomena coming and going. Thoughts, feelings, sounds. There's nothing still there, nothing stable. But it turns out that there's one aspect of experience that is stable, that is still, It's not an object like the thoughts and sounds and feelings, but it's more of a truth about our experience. Truth is not something that can be grasped. It's not an object. And this is the fact that there is always awareness. Whatever is appearing in the mind in this moment, my voice, the feelings of your body, there is awareness of those objects. There's always awareness, whether you're present to it or lost in thought or asleep. It's always there. And because it's always there, it's still, it's unmoving, it's stable. It's just something there to notice. It's not an object to be grasped. So perhaps you can notice that in this moment. There is awareness. Whatever the mind is aware of, there is awareness. This awareness is an unbroken thread. It stretches back to before you were born. So exploring this aspect of experience is simply noticing this over and over. There's not anything you need to do to make awareness happen. It happens on its own. Just simply notice. Simply notice that awareness is present. This is a very powerful practice. The mind habitually ignores awareness and focuses on the contents of awareness, because the contents, the phenomena that arise from the six sense bases, as those are impermanent, it has no lasting framework from which to understand and explore the world. This is fundamentally very scary to the mind at a very, very deep level. In the evolutionary sense, a being that doesn't understand the world correctly is likely to die. So the worse our understanding of the world is, the more scared the mind gets. And if we're always focusing on these impermanent contents of the mind will never feel safe. But the more the mind sees the stillness of ever-present awareness, the more the mind can use that stillness as a home base in which to perceive the world, in which to understand. And so this stillness, the more that we see it and notice it, this cashes out in our day-to-day existence as peace, as a peace that permeates life. The more we become aware of awareness. So we have these three aspects of stillness: the stillness of the body, which we engage by setting the intention to not move for the duration of the meditation period. The stillness of the mind, which we explore by using an anchor like the breath when needed, letting it go when the mind is content to be present on its own. The stillness of experience, which we explore simply by noticing that this is true. This is a fact about experience. There is awareness. Mm. Mm. Well, I will say that it's very nice to be back. Yeah, I don't have any plans to be gone until after Dhammadipa gets back, so I should be here for the next few months. I have a couple of announcements real quick before we start. Uh, Number one, Rocky's class on the fundamentals of meditation, which is starting next Monday, and it runs, I think, like maybe 6 Mondays or so, or perhaps 5 Mondays, um, starting next week, and it's on the fundamentals of mindfulness meditation. And then in a couple weeks, on Saturday and Sunday, April 6th and April 7th, Dhammadipa and Brad Hunter are doing a retreat online, exploring how our bodies and minds are designed to engage with the world. So both of those things should be good, I would imagine. And you can find more information on the website. Okay, so what I want to talk about tonight, I actually wanted to preface my talk a little bit. What I want to talk about tonight is something I don't know that everybody will necessarily agree with right off the bat. And I wanted to say that's like 100% okay. You definitely do not have to agree with me. Nothing I ever offer is offered in the spirit of like, this is the absolute truth and you have to believe it. It's always like, this is my worldview, and if it's helpful to you, then take it, and if not, don't. I'm not offended. There's the kind of famous sutta, the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha visits the Kalamas, and the Kalamas have all these different spiritual teachers, and the Buddha comes too, and the Buddha's giving his spiritual teachings, and someone asked, well, how do we know which one of these is a good teaching? And the Buddha has a very lovely answer, which is, well, if it produces good results, like if it leads to less suffering in your life, then it's good teaching. So if this leads to less suffering in your life, then take it, and if not, don't. So the idea I want to talk about tonight is that everything that we do, we as human beings, absolutely everything from our greatest, grandest ambitions to our little tiniest intentions, everything that we do can be seen as an act of kindness. And this is very easy to see for certain things, like giving somebody a hug or a compliment or something like that. But this way of seeing is also true of even things that are unkind, or causing violence, or that sort of thing. So to get to that point, I'm going to take a step back and kind of work my way there. So I want to start at the self, or the ego, or the grasping mind, or the mind that identifies with thoughts. These are all kind of synonymous ways of talking about the same thing, sort of synonymous ways. And I talk about the self a lot because the self is central to our practice. We practice to learn to see through this sense of self and to let it go. Often when I talk about the sense of self, I use analogies, just because it's so pervasive in our lives that it's hard to kind of talk at directly. So I'll use two analogies here that I think can fit together into my point. The first one is that the self is akin to a black hole. So the self is like a void, or a lack, or this empty hole in our psyche, in the shape of whatever hurts and whatever traumas that we've accumulated over our life. And this hole, it hurts. We want to fill this hole. We want to heal this wound in our psyche. And so, so some examples, somebody who um, didn't receive enough love will want to find ways to assuage that hurt and to kind of feel that sense of love. Similar with somebody who maybe grew up without a lot of material goods. They might want to find ways to heal that hole by accumulating material goods, that sort of thing. And so much of our behavior in life is us trying to do this, trying to fill this hole. It's we have many of these hurts that kind of accumulate into this one self, and we go through life always kind of angling for ways to fill these holes. We approach whatever situation we're in, trying to find that love or those material goods, or a sense of safety, or whatever lack that we have in our psyche. But the metaphor is that it's a black hole. We unfortunately think of the psyche as this sense of self as a normal hole where we can like successfully fill it in. If we lack love, and we think that if we get love from somebody, that's going to go away and never appear again. That's not how it works. The self is like a black hole. If you throw something in there, the black hole just gets bigger. That's what happens to us much of the time. So we're going around the world trying to solve this hurt that we have by finding a way to kind of fill in the hole. We're trying to solve our own problem. And the second metaphor I have is that of the self-colored glasses. I think I've used this one before. And the way this works is that at the core of our being, our true nature, the Buddha nature within us, the awakened mind, or the luminous mind, or however you want to talk about it. When we see the world from that perspective, it's much, much different than our conventional, than how we see the world from our conventional sense of self. So our conventional sense of self would understand is what we're doing here is, my body is sitting here. I have my own kind of needs and wants and desires that are, separate and distinct from the world around me. But the way that our true nature sees the world is that, this body is just a fluctuation in awareness. And these thoughts are just fluctuations in awareness. And those bodies out there are just fluctuations in awareness. And the fan and the light and the laptop and the world around me are just fluctuations in awareness. And this is all just a dream being dreamed. It's just awareness with no distinction between these different kind of fluctuations. And so when our true nature kind of puts on the self-colored glasses, what happens is that the self is revealed. It changes from that perspective to seem like we are these separate individual beings. And the way that cashes out in how we engage with the world is that the world is perceived differently. So kind of the example I came up with is that somebody wearing these self-colored glasses that let me actually back up a bit. So the self-colored glasses distort the way we see the world. Instead of seeing the mind, or instead of the world being perceived from this place of unity where everything is seen in an undifferentiated manner, and seen with only love, what happens is the glasses distort our perspective. So this suffering in this body is seen very clearly. The glasses may have those little magnifying glasses that jewelers use. So our suffering is seen very clearly, but the suffering of other beings is kind of tinted or maybe even blackened out. It's not. It's either not seen fully or not seen at all, or not maybe not just recognized as something that should be taken into account and not a cause for concern. And so the example I have is that if somebody's wearing these self-colored glasses, they might, maybe they go into work and somebody approaches them at work and says, hey, I know how we can, steal $1 million from the boss. If you help me, I'll give you half of this money. So the person wearing self-colored glasses might see that situation and think, okay, I have this this Lamborghini-shaped hole in my psyche, and this $500,000 would be like very wonderful in helping me fill this hurt in my psyche, and that would be all that would be seen. But if that same person, you could kind of flip the enlightenment switch and take off those self-colored glasses and have them see the world from this this perspective of unity, this place that only sees love for the world, what would be seen is, the potential suffering of the boss. The boss, would be very upset and very hurt, and his kind of trust in the world would be shattered. And the suffering of this being in the future, the being kind of considering this action in the future would be seen too. So it would be seen that, stealing this money would, bring bad karma and perhaps bad consequences onto this being in the future. And so this other suffering would be seen too, and the mind of unity would try and solve all the suffering rather than solving the suffering just kind of specific to that individual being. If that made sense. And so when we understand it this way, the behavior of everyone all the time starts from this place of unity, this place of oneness, and it starts with that that place only has one way of seeing the world, which is with love or kindness. It starts from that place, and it's filtered through this sense of self which distorts the world, and it closes down the world so the mind only really perceives the suffering of that one being clearly. And so this universal love only sees that one being and only tries to solve the suffering of that one being. And so it leads to things that cause suffering elsewhere because that suffering is not seen. So it's just delusion, that's all. It's just self is just delusion, a delusion that filters our true nature. So if you put those things together, we're all acting from this place of love, and we all have like varying levels of delusion about ourselves that lead to us trying to kind of fill these imaginary hurts inside us with in ways that will never work, but we don't really understand that. This is what everyone is doing. So everybody is acting from that core place of kindness. It's just people are deluded in various degrees. So this is one truth about the world. I don't want to deny the other way of talking about the world, where somebody who steals money is doing something selfish and unkind and greedy. That's a fair way to talk about the world too. There's truth there too. But this idea that everyone is acting from a place of kindness, there's truth in that too. And it so happens that this truth is very, very helpful. Very helpful. It does a couple of things for us. So it puts our practice in a very helpful perspective. It frames what we do here as simply removing our self-colored glasses, like learning to see through that, learning to let that go and discard our delusions. And when we do that, we just naturally act with skillfulness. We naturally act from that place of kindness that's at the core of our being. the story of the Buddhist enlightenment is often told in a way that I think kind of confuses this point. So the story of the Buddhist enlightenment goes, the Buddha sat down and said, "I'm not moving from the spot until full awakening occurs." And the story goes that Mara sent his or her demons to variously seduce and scare and terrify and just do whatever they can to knock the Buddha off his course. And the way that story sometimes gets told is that, or maybe just sometimes the way it's received is that, the Buddha must have been this being with this great willpower to resist all of Mara's demons, but that's not how it is. It's just that when things are seen clearly, the skillful choice is just kind of automatically made. It's not like you have to have this great effort and great will to be kind all the time. It's just when you see the world correctly, you're just naturally kind. It's like if you go to the grocery store and you buy one of those big bags of chips and you see it on the shelf and it's like $2.99. And that sounds like a good deal to you, and you bring it up to the register and it comes up and it's not $2.99, it's $299. That would just be ridiculous. Like you would just not buy that bag of chips, and there would be no, you would need no great willpower to resist that. You would just not buy the chips. And that's what we do when we see the world clearly. We don't steal the money from our boss. We don't say mean things to people to get power over them. We don't lie to them to try and get them to love us. We don't do these unskillful things that we habitually do when we see the world clearly. It's just about that. It's just about clear seeing. This understanding that everything is an act of kindness also brings us to a place of universal compassion. We have all suffered and we have all done unkind things, and probably all done very unkind things. I've done very unkind things. And so when somebody comes at us doing something unkind or very unkind, it's very easy to other them and say, this is just a terrible person, and you just kind of discount them and push them out of your concern. But this being is acting from a place of kindness. They're just deluded. They just don't understand how the world works. They're just trying to solve their own hurt. And that's a very different thing. That's a very different way to relate to someone. A very much more helpful way to relate to someone who's being unkind to you. I was on retreat last week, and one of the stories that was told is when Tibet was conquered by China. Tibet is was a theocracy, and so many of the important people in government were monks, and so China captured many of these monks and imprisoned them and tortured them. And the story I was told is that at one point, many years after they had been captured, two of the monks escaped the prison they had been in. They had this very arduous journey over the Himalayas in winter, barefoot, as the story I was told, and they made it over to the other side out of China, and they made their way to Dharamsala, and somehow word had gotten ahead that these two monks had escaped, and the Dalai Lama, who was living there, came out to greet them, and he greeted them, and he as he was talking to them, he said, was it difficult for you? And they said, yes, it was very difficult. And the Dalai Lama, as the story was related to me, said, what happened? Did they torture you or starve you? And they said, yes, they did all those things, but that wasn't what was difficult. And the Dalai Lama said, what happened? What was difficult for you? And the response, as I was told it, is that it was difficult for us because we almost lost compassion for the people who were torturing us. And that is a great, great, great deal of compassion. If you can, if you can have that compassion for someone who's treating you in that way and has treated you in that way for many years, and be worried about losing the compassion. And so I don't know what was in these monks' heads or hearts to kind of get that to that place, but perhaps it was something like this, understanding that these beings were acting, trying to assuage their own hurt, out of a place of delusion. And perhaps they found common humanity in that, in compassion. It's all just kind of causes and conditions. We're all the same. We're all the same creatures. And if any of our causes and conditions were more like that of the people who treated the monks that way, we would be doing those things too. Perhaps that's a hard thing to stomach, but that's the truth of the matter. But it does bring us to compassion. Also brings us to the idea of universal interdependence. We're all this one great being. We're all acting from a place of love at the heart of the matter. And when you can live that belief, there's a beauty that appears in the world, the world of humanity, the things that we do, and just kind of the motion of how we move through existence. When you don't see the world that way, when you see these people in this country are bad people, or this part of my country is bad people, or they're unkind, or whatever delusion you're operating under. When you see that way, you can't really hold all of humanity in your heart. You don't want to be associated with those kind of painful pieces. But when you can see that we're all doing the same thing, and we're all acting from a place of love, you can see the beauty in what we do, even when what we do is unskillful and harmful. It's just out of delusion, not malice. So that's what I'd offer, and this is something that you can try it out. Next time somebody comes at you in anger or unkindness or greed or whatever, maybe see if you can take a step back from that initial and very understandable reaction, and just see that person as a being who's trying to heal their own wounds, and they're just going about it in a way that's not helpful. It's not personal. Even when somebody's being personal in their attacks on you, it's not personal. They're trying to solve their own issues. You're just a convenient target. So that's what I have to offer today.